Welcome to our weekly Forex Forecast, and this is for trading for the week of March 11th to the 15th, 2019. Just a quick disclaimer here before we get started. This is for educational purposes only. Trading is a risky business, so please be careful with your money. All right, so as usual, we'll start off by taking a look at our Forex Factory calendar here. And for this week coming up, first of all, we have daylight's time shift. So please make sure to adjust your clocks accordingly. This will just have that impact of when the markets open and stuff. All right, so coming into Monday here, we have retail sales data out of the US, and then we have Fed Chair Powell speaking in the evening. Those two will be important. GDP numbers here will be important for British pound, so expect British pound to be impacted here. Now, also with the British pound, we have to be very careful when trading the pound this month, because technically we're supposed to have a resolution or Brexit by the end of the month, and leading up to it, we could get all kinds of comments around Brexit. So if there are positive comments, anything that to do with reaching an agreement or postponing it, anything like that will be positive for the British pound. But any comments in regards to not reaching an agreement or more problems around Brexit will be negative for it. So and there's vote on Tuesday. So keep an eye on your audio feed, your news feed, and just pay attention to the Brexit news, because British pound can get quite volatile leading up to the end of the month there. So keep that in mind, and we are into middle of the month here this week. All right, so then on Tuesday here, also we have CPI numbers here. These are the inflation numbers. These are very important, one of the numbers that the central banks track. So if the inflation is positive, if it's better than expected or in line with expectations, that would be good for US dollar. But any negative data here will have a negative impact on US dollar here. So keep that in mind. And like we talked about, this Brexit vote here in the parliament. So how this one goes will impact the British pound. So again, keep your eyes on that. And we also have the annual budget that will be released on Wednesday. US data here, more of it, durable orders and PPI numbers. Again, important data points that will have an impact on the US dollar. Last week, we had tons of data from Australia, not so much this week. Another one here, we have central banks. Last week, we had 3 central banks. So it was quite the week in terms of volatility. But this week, we have a Bank of Japan. So Bank of Japan has been quite vocal in the last little bit here. So they have been talking about making the monetary policy even more accommodative. So they're ready to act. That's what they have been saying. And the reason for that is they are concerned with everything that's going on. They are concerned that Japanese yen will actually strengthen. And when yen strengthens, it's bad for Japan because it impacts their exports. And Japan is a big exporter. So Japanese companies rely on Japanese yen to be weaker, or at least be something reasonable. So if the risk-averse environment causes Japanese yen to go up, that would be negative for them. So Bank of Japan has been very vocal about expansionary monetary policy lately. So so this one will be important, because this is where they will actually provide forward guidance, right? So pay attention to this, because I think they're going to be dovish. And if they are dovish, it could hit Japanese yen, and we could see all the yen crosses go up as a result of that. So, and that's that. We have preliminary EU consumer sentiment numbers, which will be important. Empire State Manufacturing Index will be important. Even though this news here is marked as yellow, this tends to be important for the US dollar. So keep an eye on that. So that's it for this week. It doesn't look like it will be as crazy in terms of the types of news that's coming out, except for maybe the CPI numbers here and Bank of Japan will be very important here as well. All right, so let's move on to the charts now. So we'll start off by taking a look at euro dollar here. So euro had been trading in this range previously that we have been talking about for quite some time here. This was the range that it had been trading in, and now it's finally coming out of that range. So with the ECB here last week, ECB was very dovish. They talked about basically putting more money into the system, and they said that there will be no interest rate hikes till next year. And as a result of that, we saw euro drop because it's negative for the currency. So now we have another big candle to the downside. So this is bearish. So looking for price to drop further. So in this case, we could get a pullback potentially into this 1300 level here. And then I will look for it to drop further. So bias is to the downside. And these are some of the levels that I would watch out for. So I am looking for a pullback potentially and then a drop. And if it's even more bearish, then it could go further. But the first target here is 1.1120 level, so bottom of this here. So that's bearish. So bearish bias for euro dollar. Just watch out for the pullback, and then I will look for a drop there. Pound can be quite, it can be volatile this week or for the rest of the month for that matter. So last time we had talked about this pin on top. So this time we have a bearish engulfing candle close here. So bias is to the downside here. Again, for this one as well, nice bearish engulfing candle close. So now I'm looking for price to drop further here. So the target here will be a 1.2780 level. But with this one, I would just be cautious because it could turn around just based on comments and the Brexit vote and any kind of stuff that's related to Brexit. But for now, bias is to the downside. 1.1280 is what I'm looking for here. So bearish bias for pound dollar. Aussie dollar here. Aussie also took a hit after we saw central bank RBA being very bearish, and now we have a bearish candle close for this week. Last week we had a bearish candle close. This week is a bearish candle close as well. So overall bias here is to the downside. So I'm looking for price to drop further here. We did see that later into the week, this one strengthened. So it pulled back a bit because all the commodity currencies strengthened. But the bias here is to the downside. And in terms of our targets, let me just remove a few things. Okay, the first one will be 69.90, and then it could go all the way into 68.20 level. So bias is bearish. For the retest here, in terms of the retest here, let's see. I think that this 80-ish level is a good level for a retest. It could go a little higher into that level, but I don't think we'll quite get there. We won't get, I don't think we'll get all the way, but we could. Anything can happen. But in terms of the retest, these are the two levels that I would look for, 0.7080 or 7120 level. But the bias is to the downside for this, and I'm looking for price to drop. Overall, another thing that actually killed Aussie earlier was JP Morgan came out and said that they expect RBA to cut rate twice. And that's really bad. So if we start hearing commentary about Reserve Bank of Australia cutting rates, anytime there is talk about central bank dropping rates, cutting interest rates, that is negative for the currency. So if you see any central bank comments like that, this is where Bank of Japan is saying they're going to go into this expansionary monetary policy. That's why it's bad for yen. And if you hear more of this talk in regards to Australian dollar, it would be negative for Australian dollar as well. A triple bottom, Rick, are you talking about, which triple bottom are you talking about? Let me just zoom out here. Around this area, yes. So that's why our target is 0.6820. So I would watch out for that because there will be buyers sitting here. So as we saw, this pin was quite an explosive move to the upside, but that was across the board. But yes, I would be mindful of this triple bottom here. So that's why 6820 is the target, but we have ways to go here still. So bias is to the downside. First target 0.6990. And then we're looking at 68.20. So in between, there's another level, but bias is to the downside for Aussie dollar. New Zealand dollar here on Friday, we saw positive data come out for Canada. And as a result of that, we have seen commodity currencies go up. New Zealand dollar is interesting. So we saw a drop in Australian dollar because of RBA. With the New Zealand dollar, it has been a little bit more bullish than Australian dollar. So it has kind of pushed back up. So we have this candle here, which has a big pin to the downside, which means it can go higher, but there's still bearishness in this candle. So the bias still remains to the downside here. In this case, we are right in the middle of this little range here, but overall looking for price to drop. 0.6720 is the first target, and then we could 66.70 second target, and then third target will be 0.6590 level, so 6600. So bias is still to the downside for New Zealand dollar. Dollar CAD had an interesting week. It was weak overall, Canadian dollar was weak overall, so we saw this one move up higher. So now we have this bullish candle close. It's finally moved out of this range here as well. So if you recall, this one was also trading in the range. As we see for this past several weeks, price was just stuck here. And now we finally have that break to the upside, which gives it a bullish bias here. So it is bullish. Now looking for a bit of a pullback before a continuation there. So we could see a retest of the top of the range here right into a 1.3380-ish level. And then I will look for a further move to the upside. First target will be the top of this candle here, 1.3460, then 1.3530-ish level right into this support resistance, which will be important. And if it goes through, final target here is 1.3660. So bullish bias here for dollar CAD as well. Now we are going back up, and this is where we could kind of head into major orders here, sorry. So overall now though, bias is bullish, looking for price to move up higher for dollar CAD. Euro pound here, this one has had an interesting week. It sat in this range for a while, and now it's trying to push higher here. So we do have a bullish candle close with this one. So this one is interesting because overall we're still sort of have that trending to the downside like this, right? But this one could go higher. I will look for a retest of this trend line here. And if it doesn't go through, then it can continue lower. So there is a slight bullish bias here, but just into that trend line. And then we'll see what it does at trend line. So looking for price to move slightly higher. Target here is around 0.8680-ish level. And if it doesn't go through, then I would look for price to drop from there. So overall bias is still to the downside, but looking for a bit of a push up. Somebody asked the question, euro dollar bias is to the downside. Euro Swiss franc here, this one has been making its way to the downside slowly here. It's following that trend line that we talked about. So bias is bearish. This weekly candle close is bearish, looking for price to drop further. 1.1250 is the target here. And then below that, we have 1.1180. So bias is bearish for Euro Swiss franc. Pound Swiss franc, this one also making its way down, mostly with this price action we saw on Friday here. So negative, Thursday, Friday, negative price action here in British pound here. Bias is bearish. Just keep in mind, though, we're sitting right into this major support resistance area. So price has to get through this 1.31. It has to stay below the 20-ish level. So 1.13 20-ish level. If it stays below that, looking for it to come back lower. Target is 1.2850 right into the bottom here. So bias is bearish for pound Swiss franc. Dollar Swiss franc, US dollar was strong this week. As a result, we have a bullish candle close here. But do keep in mind here, now we are into some resistance. So bias is bullish, but because we are into important support resistance level here, we could see some problems with it. So for now, bias is bullish and looking for it to go further up. First target would be a retest of this high at 1.0120-ish level, then looking for it to go into 1.0170. So bullish bias here for dollar Swiss franc. Pound yen got hit quite a bit last week. So we have a bearish candle close here. So this looks like a bearish reversal setup here. So looking for price to drop further. Target is to the downside, bearish bias here for pound yen. Now with any pound crosses, just be mindful of the vote and any Brexit related news. But overall, just from technical perspective here, this is looking bearish and target would be 141.00. So bearish bias, looking for it to come down further. Euro yen here, this one also, with the yen crosses, actually do keep in mind Bank of Japan, because Bank of Japan looks like they're kind of really striving to talk the currency down. And if the monetary policy report and the Bank of Japan conference, if they are dovish in that, if they have negative comments and they express concerns, that could drive yen down, which means yen crosses can go back up. So just be careful with this one because, like I said, Bank of Japan wants yen to drop. So, and they could, when central banks want something like that, they tend to get it. So just keep that in mind. This one here, a bearish bias here, first target. So I will look for a bit of a pullback, potentially into 125.30, could be into 125.80 level here. So it could go back up further and then a drop. First target would be a retest of the 124.20-ish level and then looking for it to drop further here. Bias is to the downside. Target 123.50, and if it gets through that, then we are looking at 122.50. So bias is to the downside for euro yen. Dollar yen, US dollar was strong, so it didn't drop as much as the other yen crosses, but we do have a bearish candle here. Now with this one, we do have an uptrend line in place still. So we have to see how, if price is able to break through here. So we have to look for price to break, do a pullback, and then drop like this. So bias right now is to the downside. However, because of this uptrend line here and overall bullishness in US dollar at the moment, this one could bounce off of the trend line and continue higher. So that's something to pay attention to. But we do have a bearish candle close, and if yen retains its trend, this one could drop. But if the monetary policy statement is dovish, like I expect it to be, then it could turn around. So just be careful of that one. If it breaks through 110.80 level, then we have this room to the downside here all the way into 108.50. So there is, right now, the bias is to the downside, but just be careful here. So this one, caution is what I would say. Aussie yen here, Australian dollar, like I said, Aussie, New Zealand, all the commodity currencies turned around on Friday here. They had a push to the upside. Okay, how's the audio now? Is the audio better? If you could please type a yes. Okay, perfect. Awesome. Thank you. All right, so this one is looking bearish here. Let me just get rid of some of these lines. Okay, so bias is to the downside. So with this one, see how we are still in that range. We had talked about this range last week as well, because we were at the top of the range and now price has dropped. So with this one, bias is to the downside. We have a nice bearish engulfing candle close here. So looking for price to drop, and this is what I'm looking for. So potentially a bit of a pullback into that area there, and then a drop. So first target is 77.40, and then 76.80, and then below that we have 75.96, so about 76.00. So bearish bias here for Aussie yen as well. And this is our pullback level. So 78.80 is our potential pullback level. Okay, so just a quick audio test. If you hear me okay, then can you please put in a yes in there? Okay now? Okay, all right. We're almost towards the end of this, so let's see if we can make it there real quick here. Okay, New Zealand yen here, we have a bearish candle close here as well. And with this one, we are sort of heading back here now. Like I said, on Friday, we had pullbacks in all the commodity currencies. So here, bias is bearish. I would look for maybe a pullback, a little bit slightly higher pullback to 75.85-ish level, and then a drop. So 74.80 will be the first target. 74.00 will be the second target here. So bearish bias here for New Zealand yen as well, looking for it to drop. Okay, so that actually one more yen cross here. CAD yen. CAD yen has been bearish here since last week with this big pin bar. Now we have a big bearish candle close. So bias is to the downside here as well. And in terms of targets, let's take a quick peek. We have, okay, so we could get something like this. So first target would be the bottom, 82.20, and then looking for it to drop further, 81.20. So bias is to the downside, 81.20, and then maybe we can put one more here, 80.70. So bearish bias for CAD yen as well. All right, so let's go into our commodities real quick here. And then we'll take a look at what our equities are doing. I think I may have gone a little too far. Here we go. Okay, we have a big up move in gold here. So this is for the day. Let's see. So we have a bullish close here in gold. So price didn't quite, and this is what we had talked about this in the daily analysis that we do. Price was getting stuck here, and so it didn't drop further. I was looking for it to go a little bit further into 1276 here. Didn't quite get there, just turned from 1280. So now we have on the daily a bullish candle close, and as we can see, we have a bullish close here. So which means price could go higher. And in this case, now we're at an interesting point. So we have a bullish pin bar here. The problem, though, is that we are right into this resistance, support resistance level. So price has reacted. See how it came back to do a retest here? So this is what will be important. If it gets stuck below this 1300 level, then we could see price drop further. See how we had a nice big drop, then a pullback, and price got stuck here, and a further drop. So this is what we have to see. How does price react here? A couple of options. One is that it does a pullback into that level and then gets stuck and drops again. Second option is that it could go higher and we could get a bullish move in our in gold. So it could go further into this 1320 level. So right now it's looking a bit bullish. So keep in mind that it could get stuck here too. So right now I would say bias is bullish, but with caution here. And yes, gold will be impacted by dollar news. So that is important to note as well. Oil here. Oil has been stuck in this range for some time now, for the last 3 weeks. So still range bound, looks like a slightly lower high, but the candle close here is very neutral. It's holding above this 55.15 level, but the candle is neutral. So we have to wait and see how this one goes. So the problem with oil that oil is having right now is that it's just getting stuck in this level. And if it cannot break this level here, then we could get a further move to the upside, right? So this is what I'm looking at. So bias right now is neutral, but overall bias is still to the upside. So if it doesn't go through 55.15 to the downside, chances are quite high that it will go higher. So first, we have to get out of this range. So if it stays above 55.15, I will look for a move towards the top of the range. And if it doesn't break to the top of the range, then we just go back in. But bias is neutral for this week. Overall bias still remains to the upside. So that is, copper. Did not do copper. Let's take a quick peek here. Copper pulled back, but we have a bearish candle close here. So bias is to the downside, looking for a retest of this range at 2.84, where it pushed up higher. So in this case as well here, we have a uptrend in place like this. And if price does not break below this level at 2.84, which is the top of the range that it was in. So this is the price range that it was trading in. Now it's broken out. And generally what happens is price breaks out, pulls back, and then it can do a continuation to the upside, right? So that's what we're potentially looking at. But because we have a bearish candle, the bias is to the downside. But if it doesn't break here, I would look for that move. But if it does break through, and then we are kind of back in this range once again. So either of those options can happen. Just because we are sitting at an important support resistance level, we have to see which way copper will go here. And based on that, we can take the next step. So copper, that's copper. Let's take a quick peek at our Bitcoin here and silver. Silver is... Okay, so silver on the weekly here, we have a bullish close here as well. This one could go higher. First target is 1550. It could go into 1560 level. So bullish bias here for copper. Looks like we could go higher. But because we have this previous week, we had this bearish engulfing candle close. A lot of times what can happen is we get this and then a drop here. So target here is 15.60 level. If it goes through that, then it can go all the way into the 1620 level, which is the next level at the top of the range. But many times we see this behavior. We have a bearish engulfing candle, a pullback, and then a further drop. So watch out for that type of price action. Pullback into 15.60. So bullish bias and target is 15.60 as the first target. All right, now we are into equities. Equities have been interesting. We have seen a drop here, but on Friday, we saw price pushing higher here. So here we have a bearish engulfing candle close. Price went into the high, which we talked about last week. It was right into the high here. Now we have a bearish candle close. With this one, bias is to the downside and looking for a further drop here. And in case of, so looking for pullback like this and then a drop. So pull back into 2771 level and target is 2680. So bias is bearish for S&P 500. Nikkei here, this one is also looking bearish. We could get a pullback into 21511 and then a further drop. Bearish bias here again, nice bearish engulfing candle close, and looking for it to drop further here. So this is looking quite bearish as well. Target is 20224. So bearish bias for Nikkei. NASDAQ is also looking bearish. We have a bearish engulfing candle close. Again, we have this rejection from this major support and resistance level here. Potential pullback could be into 7100 level, and then looking for a further drop 6890, and then potentially lower into 6728. So first target is 6890 here. So bias is bearish. And for DAX as well, we saw this rejection from major support and resistance here. Pullback level 11544, bias is to the downside, and target here is 11280. So bearish bias for DAX as well. FTSE, let's take a look at FTSE here. This one hasn't really done anything the entire week. Now we have a completely neutral candle close here, but this one will also be impacted by Brexit news, so just keep that in mind. All right, so that's all I have. Any questions before we wrap it up here? So we'll have to, Rick, it'll depend on what kind of news it is when central banks cut. Well, it depends on what kind of news it is. Monetary policy, expansionary monetary policy is good for the stock market, bad for the currency. But like GDP numbers, if they are positive, then it's positive for both of them, for the indices, equities market, as well as the currency. So it really depends on what kind of news we have, and different news can have different impact on the indices. So we'll talk about it more in our daily analysis. All right, so that's it. You guys have a wonderful rest of the weekend, and I will see you again next time. Bye for now.